The Memory Thief, a haunting tale of lost souls. I should have known something was wrong when I started finding the Polaroids. The first one appeared on my kitchen counter on a Tuesday morning in October, right next to my coffee mug. It showed a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, sitting on a swing set I didn't recognize. She had dark hair and pigtails and was wearing a yellow dress that looked like something from the 1980s. The photo was faded and slightly blurred, the way old instant cameras sometimes produced. I lived alone in my apartment on Maple Street, had for 3 years since the divorce. No one had keys except my landlord, and Mrs. Chen from downstairs who watered my plants when I traveled for work. Neither of them would have left random photographs in my kitchen. I turned the Polaroid over. Written in faded blue ink were the words, Emma, age 7, last day of summer. The name meant nothing to me. I'd never known an Emma, and I definitely didn't have any childhood photos lying around my apartment. Hell, I barely had any photos at all since Rebecca took most of them in the divorce settlement. I shrugged it off as one of those weird urban mysteries. Maybe a previous tenant had left it behind and it had fallen from some hidden spot. I stuck it to my refrigerator with a magnet and forgot about it. The second photo showed up 3 days later, this time on my nightstand. Same vintage look, same faded quality. This one showed the same dark-haired girl, slightly older, maybe 9, standing in front of a Christmas tree. She was holding a wrapped present and grinning at the camera. On the back, Emma, age 9, Christmas morning. That's when I started paying attention. I searched my apartment top to bottom, checked every drawer, every closet, every possible hiding place where old photos might have been stored. Nothing. I even called my landlord, Mr. Petrov, who spoke in broken English and seemed genuinely confused when I asked about the previous tenant. No children, old man, very quiet, died in sleep. You are first since him. What was his name, I asked. Walter something, Walter Pickman? I have records downstairs. Walter Pickman. The name didn't ring any bells, but I wrote it down anyway. The third photo appeared a week later, tucked under my windshield wiper when I left work. This time Emma looked about 12, standing awkwardly in what appeared to be a middle school gymnasium. She was wearing a formal dress and standing next to a boy in an ill-fitting tuxedo. Both looked uncomfortable. Emma, age 12, 8th grade dance. I was starting to feel genuinely disturbed. Someone was clearly watching me, learning my routine, finding ways to place these photos where I'd find them. But why? What did they want? I went to the police, but Detective Morrison looked at me like I was wasting his time. Someone's leaving old photos around your apartment and car. That's weird, but not exactly criminal. Any chance it's an ex-girlfriend playing mind games? My ex-wife lives in Portland now. These aren't her photos. Any other enemies? Someone you've wronged professionally? I worked as a freelance graphic designer, mostly corporate logos and website layouts. Hard to make mortal enemies designing annual reports for insurance companies. Look, if someone threatens you or if you catch them in the act, give us a call. But random photos don't constitute harassment. That night I installed security cameras in my apartment and on my car. Wireless ones that connected to my phone so I could monitor everything remotely. If someone was playing games with me, I'd catch them in the act. The fourth photo appeared the next morning, sitting on my bathroom sink next to my toothbrush. I immediately checked the camera feeds on my phone. Nothing. No one had entered my apartment. The timestamp showed the photo had appeared sometime between 3:17 and 3:23 a.m., but the cameras had recorded nothing but an empty bathroom. This photo was different. Emma looked about 16 and she was crying. She sat on what looked like a hospital bed, wearing a patient gown. Her hair was shorter and she looked thin, too thin. Emma, age 16, the diagnosis. I stared at the photo for a long time, and for the first time, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. This wasn't just someone's discarded family photos, this was a story, told in chronological order, and it was becoming clear that Emma's story wasn't going to have a happy ending. That's when I decided to dig deeper into Walter Pickman. The city records office had minimal information. Walter Pickman, age 67, had lived in my apartment for 12 years before dying of natural causes in his sleep. No family, no next of kin. His belongings had been donated to charity and the apartment had sat empty for 6 months before I'd moved in. But the librarian at the Historical Society, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Kowalski, remembered him. Oh yes, Walter, strange man, came in here nearly every day for years, always researching the same thing. What was he researching? Missing children, she said. Specifically, children who disappeared from this area over the past 50 years. He had this theory that there was a pattern, that someone was taking kids and the authorities were covering it up. She led me to a back room where they kept local newspaper archives. He spent hours going through these old papers, copying articles, making lists. We thought he was writing a book or something. Turned out he was just obsessed. Did he ever mention a girl named Emma? Emma Hartwell. Oh my, you know about Emma? My blood went cold. Tell me. Sweet little girl, disappeared in 1987 when she was 17, just vanished one day walking home from school. Police searched for weeks but never found so much as a trace. Her parents moved away a few years later, couldn't bear living in the same town. Walter was convinced she'd been murdered, that her body was hidden somewhere in town. Why was he so interested in her case specifically? Because he claimed he'd seen her. Seen her? You mean like, alive? No dear, dead. Walter claimed Emma's ghost was haunting him, showing him memories of her life. He said she appeared to him in photographs that materialized out of nowhere, always showing moments from her childhood and teenage years. The room felt like it was spinning. What happened to Walter's research, his files? After he died, his landlord donated everything to us. We have boxes of his material in storage. Most of it seemed like the ramblings of a disturbed man, but what? Some of his theories were surprisingly well researched. He'd identified 7 children who disappeared from this area between 1975 and 1995, all around the same age, all under similar circumstances. If he was right, there might have been a serial killer operating here for decades. Mrs. Kowalski led me to the basement storage area and pulled out 3 cardboard boxes labeled Pickman Estate. Inside were hundreds of newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, maps marked with red X's, and dozens of photographs. Old Polaroids, just like the ones appearing in my apartment. I found Emma's photos immediately, the same shots I'd been receiving, plus dozens more. Emma as a toddler, Emma starting kindergarten, Emma losing her first tooth, Emma at birthday parties, Halloween costumes, family vacations. But there were other children too. A boy named Michael who disappeared in 1983. A girl named Sarah who'd vanished in 1979. Each with their own collection of childhood photos, their own chronological story told in fading Polaroids, all leading up to their disappearances. Mrs. Kowalski, where did Walter get these photos? These are family pictures, baby photos, school events. How would he have access to them? That's what was so disturbing about Walter's obsession. He claimed the children were showing him their memories, that they appeared to him as spirits and somehow projected these images into photographs. And you believed him? I didn't want to. But Walter brought us new photos every few weeks, always of children who disappeared decades ago. Photos that showed intimate family moments no outsider should have access to. We tried to trace some of them, contacted surviving family members when we could find them. They confirmed the photos were real, but they'd never seen these specific pictures before. What are you saying? Walter believed the missing children were trapped somehow, unable to move on. He thought they were trying to tell their stories through him, showing him their lives before they were taken. He spent years trying to figure out who had killed them and where their bodies were hidden. Did he ever find out? He died before he could solve it, but in his last few weeks, he seemed excited about something. He told me he was close to a breakthrough, that the children were showing him more than just memories, they were showing him clues. I spent the rest of the afternoon going through Walter's files. His handwriting became increasingly erratic over the years, filled with paranoid theories and desperate hypotheses, but buried in the madness were genuine insights. He'd mapped the disappearances geographically and found they all occurred within a 3-mile radius of downtown. He'd identified common factors. All the children were walking alone when they vanished, all were taken during daylight hours, all came from middle-class families. Most importantly, he'd identified a suspect. Dr. Marcus Bellwether had been a pediatrician in town from 1973 to 1996. His practice was located at the center of Walter's geographical cluster, and according to medical records, he'd treated all 7 missing children at some point in their lives. Walter's notes became increasingly focused on Bellwether in the final months. He discovered that the doctor had purchased a remote property outside town in 1974, 100 acres of wooded land with an old farmhouse. The property had been sold after Bellwether's death in 1996, but Walter believed it held the key to finding the missing children. The current owners were a couple named the Hendersons, who'd renovated the farmhouse and turned it into a bed and breakfast called Willowbrook Inn. I was so absorbed in Walter's research that I didn't notice it was getting dark outside. Mrs. Kowalski had gone home hours ago, leaving me alone in the basement with the boxes of evidence. That's when I found the final file. It was in an envelope marked for whoever comes after me. Inside was a letter in Walter's shaky handwriting dated just 3 days before his death. They're getting stronger. The children, they can do more than just show me memories now. Emma came to me last night and for the first time she spoke. She told me where to find them. She told me about the room under the farmhouse, about the doctor's collection. But she also warned me about the price of knowing. Whoever finds this letter, please understand, once you start seeing the photographs you can't stop. The children choose who can help them, and once they choose you, you're bound to them until their killer is exposed. Walter Pickman wasn't my real name. I was David Morrison, and I lived in Seattle before Emma found me. I tried to run, tried to ignore the photos, but they followed me everywhere. The children need justice. Their bodies need to be found so their families can have closure. But the person who helps them pays a price. You'll start seeing them everywhere, not just in photos but in mirrors, in shadows, in your dreams. They'll show you how they died and you'll feel every moment of their terror. I'm dying now and I think it's because I've seen too much. My heart can't take any more of their pain, but maybe the next person will be stronger. Maybe you'll be able to finish what I started. Go to Willowbrook Inn, ask to see the basement. Tell them you're researching the property's history. Emma will show you where to look. And remember, once you find them, once you expose the truth, they'll finally be able to rest. But until then, you're theirs. I sat in that basement for a long time, holding Walter's letter and, just trying to process what I'd learned. Part of me wanted to put everything back in the boxes and walk away. Go home, pack my bags, move to another city, and pretend none of this had ever happened. But I couldn't stop thinking about Emma, about the progression of photos showing her life, leading up to that final image of her in the hospital bed. She'd been sick when she disappeared, vulnerable, and someone had taken advantage of that vulnerability. I drove home through the dark streets of town, Walter's boxes in my back seat. As I pulled into my parking space, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Every window in my apartment building was dark except mine. Light blazed from behind my curtains, not the warm yellow of electric bulbs, but the harsh white flash of cameras going off. I climbed the stairs slowly, my heart just hammering. My apartment door was unlocked. Inside, I found them. Hundreds of Polaroids scattered across every surface. The coffee table, the kitchen counter, the bed, the floor, covered in photographs that were still developing, their images slowly emerging from the chemical fog. But these weren't childhood memories. These were the photos Walter had warned me about. I saw Emma at 17, walking home from school on the day she disappeared. I saw her accepting a ride from a kind-looking older man in a white sedan. I saw her in what looked like a medical examination room, but wrong somehow. The equipment was strange, the restraints weren't medical. I saw her realization that she wasn't in a hospital. I saw her fear. I saw her final moments. But I also saw something else. In the background of several photos, barely visible, was a man's face, Dr. Marcus Bellwether smiling as he worked. And I saw the room where it happened. Underground, with stone walls and a drain in the center of the floor. A room that matched the description of the basement at the old farmhouse. The photos were still appearing, materializing on empty surfaces as I watched. Emma wasn't just showing me memories now, she was showing me evidence. I gathered the photos with shaking hands and stuffed them into a bag. Then I got in my car and drove toward Willowbrook Inn. The farmhouse sat at the end of a winding dirt road surrounded by dense woods. It was well past midnight when I arrived, but, lights were on in several windows. A discreet sign by the front door read, Willowbrook Inn, established 1997. I parked and walked to the front door, not entirely sure what I was going to say. Before I could knock, the door opened. "You're here about the children." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I'm Carol Henderson. My husband and I bought this property 23 years ago. We've been waiting for someone like you ever since." She led me inside where her husband Jim was waiting with a pot of coffee and a grim expression. "We know about Dr. Bellwether. We've always known, when we bought this place we found things in the basement. Terrible things. We called the police, but Dr. Bellwether had been dead for a year by then. The statute of limitations had expired on most crimes, and without bodies, there wasn't much they could do. They told us to clean out the basement and forget what we'd seen. But you didn't forget. How could we? We found photographs, medical equipment, journals documenting what he'd done to those poor children. We kept everything, thinking someday someone would need it for evidence. Then the haunting started. We'd find old photos appearing in guest rooms. Children would show up in mirrors, in windows, in the corners of our vision. Always the same ones. 7 children, always watching, always waiting. We tried to leave. Sold the business twice, actually, but each time something would happen to the buyers. Accidents, illnesses, financial problems. The children didn't want us to go. They needed us to stay until someone came who could help them. Someone like Walter Pickman. Walter came here dozens of times over the years. The children showed him things just like they're showing you. But Walter was old, sick. His heart couldn't handle what they needed him to see. Come in. It's time you saw the basement. The basement stairs were modern, installed when the Hendersons had renovated. But at the bottom, behind a false wall that Jim removed with practiced efficiency, was the original foundation. Dr. Bellwether's Chamber of Horrors was exactly as Emma had shown me in the photographs. Stone walls, a drain in the center, hooks and restraints that made my stomach turn. But there were also filing cabinets full of photographs, medical journals filled with clinical descriptions of torture, and maps marking burial sites throughout the property. We found 7 graves, all exactly where his journals indicated. But we were afraid to dig them up ourselves. We needed someone with authority, someone who could do this legally. The police wouldn't listen to you? Would you believe a story about ghost children leading you to evidence? We needed someone the children had chosen, someone who could present the case without mentioning the supernatural elements. I understood. The photos I'd been collecting, the evidence Walter had gathered, it was all real, all admissible in court. I didn't need to mention the ghosts to make a case against a dead man and find closure for the families. We spent the rest of the night documenting everything. I photographed the basement chamber, the filing cabinets, the burial maps. As I worked, I kept seeing movement in my peripheral vision. Children watching from the shadows, waiting patiently for justice. As dawn approached, I called Detective Morrison. Remember those weird photos I told you about? I need you to get out here with a forensics team. I found something that's going to change everything. The next few weeks were a blur of police activity, media attention, and legal proceedings. The forensics team found the remains of all 7 missing children exactly where Bellwether's maps indicated. DNA evidence confirmed their identities, bringing closure to families who'd waited decades for answers. The photographs I'd collected provided a timeline of the doctor's crimes, showing how he'd gained each child's trust before betraying it in the most horrific way possible. Even without knowing their supernatural origin, the photos were compelling evidence of premeditation and planning. The case made national news. Serial killer's victims found after 30 years dominated headlines for weeks. I was interviewed on television, praised as a dedicated researcher who'd solved one of the region's oldest cold cases. I never mentioned the ghosts. But as the media attention died down and the legal proceedings concluded, I noticed something changing. The photos had stopped appearing in my apartment. I no longer saw children in mirrors or shadows. Emma and the others had gotten what they needed: justice, closure, and proper burial for their remains. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 3 months after the case closed, I found a new photo on my kitchen counter. Not a Polaroid this time, but a digital print on modern photo paper. It showed a young boy, maybe 10 years old, standing in front of what looked like a school. He had sad eyes and a forced smile, on the back written in fresh ink, Tommy, age 10, first day at new school. I stared at the photo for a long time, my hand shaking. Emma and the others were at rest now, but apparently there were other children who needed help. Other cases that had gone unsolved, other families who deserved answers. I looked around my apartment and for just a moment I saw him, Tommy, standing in the corner of my living room, translucent and patient. He raised one small hand and waved at me, and I knew my work was far from over. The children choose who can help them, Walter had written. And once they choose you, you're bound to them until their killer is exposed. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at my computer. Time to start researching missing children again. After all, someone has to speak for the dead. The photos keep coming, different children from different decades, all with their own stories of betrayal and loss. I've learned to live with the constant presence of ghosts, the weight of their desperate hope, the responsibility of being their voice in a world that's forgotten them. Sometimes I wonder if this is how Walter started, just an ordinary person who found one mysterious photo and couldn't walk away. Maybe David Morrison before him was the same, chosen by children who needed justice and willing to sacrifice his sanity to give it to them. I've started keeping detailed records of everything, just like Walter did. Someday, when the strain becomes too much, someone else will find my files and take up the burden. The children will choose a new champion, and the cycle will continue. Because the dead don't rest easy when their killers go unpunished. And somewhere in the darkness between life and death, innocent souls wait patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to help them find peace. The photos never lie, the children never forget. And justice, no matter how long delayed, always finds a way. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to ring the bell to be notified of new stories as soon as they come out.
Have you ever found something mysterious, something that just felt completely out of place, maybe even in your own home? And what if that discovery, well, what if it didn't just confuse you for a bit, but it actually led you down this really chilling rabbit hole into a mystery decades old, involving missing kids and, well, a pretty unsettling, maybe even supernatural way of communicating? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission, our deep dive, is really to unpack this single gripping story. It's from a source called, "I found mysterious photos in my apartment. Now dead children won't leave me alone." Terrifying. And this isn't just, a spooky tale. It's really an unfolding mystery. The line between what's natural and what seems totally inexplicable, it just blurs. And it leads eventually to this profound, hard-won sense of justice. So we're going on a journey today. Finding one faded Polaroid leads to uncovering a serial killer's hidden past. And then there's this unexpected, really heavy burden that comes with solving something that seemed, well, unsolvable.
Right, and what's really fascinating here, I think, is how something seemingly mundane, just an everyday object found out of place, can totally shatter someone's reality. You can propel them into this quest that's just, well, far bigger than they could have imagined at first. And it really highlights that profound personal change that happens when, chasing down information becomes this deeply personal drive for justice.
Yeah, exactly. So our story kicks off with something pretty ordinary, actually. Our protagonist, living alone, Maple Street apartment, finds this faded Polaroid kitchen counter. October morning, it shows a little girl, maybe 7, on a swing set. The photo's old, kind of blurry, very like 1980s vibe, and written on the back, faded blue ink, Emma, age 7, last day of summer. Now, the backstory here is important. Our protagonist lived there 3 years post-divorce. The ex, Rebecca, she took most of the photos. Only the landlord, Mr. Petrov, and the downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had keys. Neither seems like the type to just leave random pictures around. So, initially, their reaction is just sort of shrug it off. An urban mystery, maybe something left by an old tenant, stuck it on the fridge, end of story, right? Or so they thought.
You'd think so. But that dismissal, that initial rationalization, it doesn't last long.
No, it doesn't, because then a pattern starts. Just 3 days later, there's a second photo. This time, nightstand, right by the bed. It's Emma again, maybe 9 now, in front of the Christmas tree.
Okay, so that's definitely harder to ignore. The kitchen counter is one thing, the nightstand is quite another.
Exactly. And then a week after that, a third photo turns up under the windshield wiper of their car. Emma, maybe 12. Awkward 8th grade dance photo, boy in a tux beside her. Okay, let's just unpack this for a second. The progression here, it's chilling. Think about it. What would you do? Random photos of a kid you don't know just keep appearing in your most private spaces.
The feeling of being watched must have been overwhelming at this point.
Intrusion escalates to surveillance almost.
Totally. They felt watched, searched the apartment top to bottom, found nothing. They called the landlord, Mr. Petrov. He mentioned sort of haltingly the previous tenant. Walter Pickman, quite old guy, died right there in the apartment.
Ah, a potential link, perhaps. Someone who lived there before.
Right, so naturally the next step is the police. But Detective Morrison, not exactly helpful. He basically says, yeah, it's weird, but not really criminal. Suggested maybe an ex-girlfriend playing games or an enemy, which wasn't the case here, right? The protagonist is a graphic designer, no known enemies.
None. So that official channel, it's just a dead end. More frustrating than anything, leaves them feeling really alone with this strangeness.
And that feeling, that dismissal, often fuels people to take things into their own hands, doesn't it?
It absolutely did here. They immediately went out, bought wireless security cameras, put them up in the apartment, one pointing at the car, too.
A logical step. Trying to find a rational explanation, catch whoever's doing this.
You'd think, but the very next morning, the fourth photo appeared on the bathroom sink, right next to the toothbrush.
Wow.
It was Emma again, maybe 16, crying, in a hospital gown looking terribly thin, and the label just said, the diagnosis.
And the cameras?
The cameras showed nothing, no entry. Checked the footage between 3:17 and 3:23 a.m., the only window it could have happened. Blank. Nobody came in or out.
And that, right there, that's the critical moment. That's the pivot. From a psychological perspective, this is where you hit that wall of cognitive dissonance. Your evidence, the camera footage, directly contradicts reality. Logic breaks down. For the protagonist, this isn't just odd anymore. It's something else entirely. Curiosity turns into this chilling realization about Emma's story, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that lack of explanation, that impossibility, it forces them to look again at the only lead they have. Walter Pickman, the guy who died in the apartment. City records, pretty thin. Walter died at 67, natural causes, lived there 12 years, no family listed, belongings went to charity, standard stuff.
So seemingly another dead end.
Almost. But then the Historical Society, a librarian there, Mrs. Kowalski, she actually remembered Walter, described him as a strange man, she said. But more than that, he was obsessed, researching missing children from the area, going back 50 years.
Obsessed how?
He apparently believed there was a pattern, some kind of cover-up related to these disappearances, and here's where it just jumps tracks completely. We've gone from weird photos in an apartment to a historical society, a dead tenant obsessed with missing kids. It's a huge leap.
A massive leap. And connecting those dots must have felt surreal.
Absolutely. Then Mrs. Kowalski drops the real bombshell. She knew about Emma Hartwell. Emma disappeared in 1987. She was 17, just walking home from school one day, vanished without a trace. Her parents, they eventually moved away, couldn't handle it.
So Emma, the girl in the photos, was a real missing person.
A real missing person.
Right.
And Walter, his claim was extraordinary. He told Mrs. Kowalski he saw Emma's ghost.
He saw her ghost.
Yeah, haunting him, showing him memories. Memories that, according to Walter, just materialized out of nowhere as these Polaroid photographs.
Who materializes photographs. That's weird.
And get this, it wasn't just Emma. The Historical Society had boxes, Walter's stuff labeled Pickman Estate, filled with newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, maps covered in red X's, and dozens, maybe hundreds of Polaroids. All the photos of Emma were in there, plus photos of other missing children. Michael disappeared 83. Sarah vanished 79. Whole sets of photos for each.
So Walter was documenting this phenomenon, or his interactions with these spirits.
Documenting something. And Mrs. Kowalski confirmed Walter would bring in new photos every few weeks, always Polaroids, always of children who disappeared decades ago. And here's the truly mind-bending part. When the society, maybe Walter himself, contacted surviving family members, they confirmed the pictures were real, authentic family photos, but they had never seen those specific photos before. Photos of moments they didn't know had ever been captured.
Okay, that fundamentally challenges our idea of what evidence even is. If the information source is, well, seemingly supernatural, but the result is tangible, verifiable proof, it forces a reevaluation. Can knowledge, can evidence be transmitted like this, so intimately yet so otherworldly? It blurs all the conventional lines.
Walter certainly thought so. He believed the children were trapped somehow, showing him their lives, their memories before they were taken, trying to get him to find their killer, find their bodies.
A desperate attempt to communicate, channeled through him.
Right. And Mrs. Kowalski said in his last weeks, Walter felt he was getting close. Close to a breakthrough, he'd said. The kids were showing him clues now, not just memories.
So he wasn't just passively receiving these images anymore. There was a direction, a purpose emerging.
Exactly. And despite the source being, ghosts and materialized photos, Walter's approach was surprisingly logical. He mapped everything, found all the disappearances happened within a 3-mile radius downtown. He found common factors, kids walking alone, daylight hours, middle-class families, basic profiling almost.
Applying analytical methods to supernatural input. That's fascinating.
And from that analysis, he zeroed in on a suspect, Dr. Marcus Bellwether, a pediatrician, practiced in town from 1973 to 1996. His office, smack dab in the center of that 3-mile cluster.
Okay, a respected figure, a doctor, often how these things go.
Now the connection. Medical records showed Dr. Bellwether had treated all 7 of the missing children Walter was focused on.
All 7. That's not a coincidence.
Not likely. Walter also found Bellwether bought property in 1974. Remote place, 100 acres, woods, old farmhouse. Bellwether died in 96. The property was sold. It's now a bed and breakfast called Willowbrook Inn, run by a couple named Henderson.
So Walter identified the suspect and a potential location tied to him.
He did. And as our protagonist is digging through all this stuff, Walter's files, they find one last thing. An envelope marked "For whoever comes after me," dated just 3 days before Walter died.
A final message.
A chilling one. Walter wrote, "They're getting stronger." He said, "Emma came to me last night, and for the first time, she spoke."
Spoke? What did she say?
She told him about the room under the farmhouse and about the doctor's collection. Walter also left a warning about the price of knowing this stuff. He wrote, "Once you start seeing the photographs, you can't stop. The children choose who can help them, and once they choose you, you're bound to them until their killer is exposed."
Bound to them. That's a heavy burden.
Incredibly heavy. He even revealed his real name wasn't Walter Pickman, it was David Morrison. He'd lived in Seattle, but Emma found him, the photos followed him, he had to move, change his identity. He wrote that the children started showing him how they died, the terror. He believed he was literally dying from witnessing their pain.
The psychological toll must have been immense. Unbearable, even.
His final directive was clear. Go to Willowbrook Inn, ask to see the basement, Emma will show you. He said, once you find them, they'll finally be able to rest. But until then, you're theirs.
Wow. A direct instruction and a passing of the torch, almost.
Completely. So our protagonist drives home, just reeling from all this. Part of him desperately wants to just walk away, forget it all. But as they pull into their parking spot, they see lights flashing in their apartment window. Not normal lights.
Flashing how?
Like camera flashes. That harsh white pop. Over and over, they run inside. The apartment is covered. Hundreds of Polaroids. Everywhere. On the floor, furniture, counters. Many still developing. The images slowly appearing.
Oh my God. Not memories this time.
No, these are different. These are evidence. Pictures of Emma walking home from school that day, accepting a ride from Dr. Bellwether, him driving her away. Pictures inside a horrifying room, like a makeshift medical exam room. Stone walls, restraints, Emma's fear, her final moments. Bellwether's face clear as day in some of them. In the room, it matched the description Walter got from Emma, the one under the farmhouse basement.
So the photos escalated from past memories to present evidence of the crime itself.
Exactly. This wasn't just a haunting anymore. It was a direct call to action, a mission, a dark inheritance, like you said. And for us listening, just imagine that weight settling on you. You've stumbled into something so much bigger, so much darker than you ever imagined.
The responsibility must feel crushing.
No doubt. So the protagonist gathers up all these new photos, Walter's files, everything, drives straight to Willowbrook Inn. Middle of the night, lights are on. A woman opens the door, Carol Henderson, and she looks unsurprised.
Unsurprised.
Her first words, "You're here about the children." She and her husband, Jim, they bought the place in 1997. They knew about Dr. Bellwether.
They knew how.
They found things when they were renovating. Terrible things, Carol said in the basement. They called the police back then. But Bellwether was already dead. Statute of limitations on some potential charges had likely passed. And crucially, without bodies, the police basically dismissed their findings.
But just lived with it.
They kept everything, the stuff they found. They were waiting, Carol said, waiting for someone like the protagonist to show up.
Had they experienced anything unusual?
Oh, yeah. Their own haunting. Old photos appearing randomly. Seeing children in mirrors, reflections in windows. They tried to sell the inn twice. Yeah. Both times, the deals fell through spectacularly. Accidents, sudden illnesses, financial ruin for the buyers.
Like the place was cursed.
Carol said the children didn't want us to go. They also confirmed Walter Pickman or David Morrison had visited them dozens of times over the years. The children showed him things too, they said, but he was just too old, too frail by the end to do much.
So the Hendersons were custodians waiting for the right person.
Exactly. Jim then takes the protagonist down to the basement, shows them a false wall behind it, the original foundation, and Bellwether's chamber of horrors. Stone walls, a floor drain, hooks in the ceiling, restraints bolted to a table, just like the photos showed.
Oh, God.
But there was more. Filing cabinets, stuffed with Bellwether's own photos of his victims, detailed medical journals documenting years of torture, and maps. Maps marking burial sites on the 100-acre property.
He documented everything. The planning, the act, the disposal.
Everything. Carol quietly tells the protagonist, "We found 7 graves, all exactly where his journals indicated." But they were terrified to dig them up. They knew they needed official authority, and they knew the police wouldn't believe a story about ghost children leading them to the evidence.
They needed someone chosen by the children, someone who could bridge that gap, present the physical evidence without needing to explain the supernatural source.
Exactly. Our protagonists understood. The photos they now had, combined with Walter's research and the Hendersons' testimony, plus the contents of that room, it was overwhelming physical evidence. Admissible, no ghost required for the official report.
A chain of custody almost, guided by the unseen.
Right. As they documented everything in that basement, the protagonists felt them, saw them. The children watching from the shadows, waiting. At dawn, they made the call to Detective Morrison. Told him to come to the inn and bring a full forensics team.
Must have been quite a call for Morrison to receive after dismissing the initial report.
You can imagine. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Police everywhere, media frenzy. The remains of all 7 missing children were recovered, exactly where Bellwether's maps and journals said they'd be. DNA confirmed their identities. Families finally had answers, closure, after decades of not knowing.
Decades of pain finally reaching some kind of resolution.
And the photos, Walter's research, Bellwether's own horrific records, they provided a chilling timeline. Clear evidence of premeditation, the extent of his crimes, even without mentioning how the investigation restarted. It made national news. Serial killers' victims found after 30 years. Our protagonist was hailed as this brilliant amateur researcher. They never mentioned the ghosts.
Protecting the source, protecting the truth of the discovery.
And then, silence. The photos stopped appearing. No more children glimpsed in mirrors or shadows. Emma, Michael, Sarah, all of them. They seemed to be at rest. Finally.
Justice served, the cycle seemingly broken.
Seemingly. Our protagonist thought it was over. They were wrong. 3 months later, case closed, media gone, life returning to some semblance of normal. A new photo appeared. Kitchen counter again. But this time, not a Polaroid. A modern digital print. A young boy, maybe 10. Label, Tommy, age 10. First day at new school.
A new child.
A new photo.
And then they saw him, Tommy, standing in the corner of the living room, translucent, waving.
Wow. So the phenomenon, it wasn't just tied to Bellwether's victims. It was broader. And this poses such a profound question, doesn't it, about what it means to be chosen like this. Is it a gift, some kind of cosmic connection to unresolved injustice? Or is it really a curse, a relentless psychological burden you carry for life? Because clearly finding justice for one group didn't end the protagonist's connection. It just opened a new chapter.
Exactly. Walter's words just echoed back. The children choose who can help them. Once they choose you, you're bound to them until their killer is exposed. So what do? They started researching missing children again, Tommy, trying to find out who he was, what happened. As the source says, someone has to speak for the dead.
Taking on the mantle left by Walter, pretty much. The photos keep coming now. Different children, different decades, different circumstances. The protagonist has, quote, learned to live with the constant presence of ghosts, the weight of their desperate hope, the responsibility of being their voice.
An incredible lifelong commitment born from a single unexplained photograph.
And just like Walter, they're keeping meticulous records now. Files, photos, research. Understanding that someday, maybe, the strain will be too much and someone else will find their files. Take up the burden. Because, as the narrative concludes, the children will choose a new champion and the cycle will continue.
An unending cycle of spectral appeals for justice.
It really makes you question the nature of justice itself, doesn't it? Especially when it seems to be driven, or at least initiated, by these spectral hands. It pushes the boundaries of what we consider the past, making it a living, demanding presence.
It certainly complicates our understanding of closure.
It does. This whole deep dive, this incredible story, it's a stark reminder, I think. Some truths just refuse to stay buried. Some voices demand to be heard, even from beyond the grave. And it really begs the question, doesn't it? If the dead don't rest until justice is served, what unresolved stories might be waiting out there in the shadows around you, just waiting for someone brave enough, or maybe foolish enough, to actually listen?